shrimpers up here to talk about things I can't. I want to take us way back, okay? This is a project that Dana and Seth and I have been working on for quite a while. Lance has been part of it, and it's Rivers Connect. Because as we start sharing these stories of our waters, we connect with other people in other river basins. And they have the same stories, and we're going to have those stories shared here today. I'm going to take you even further back to about 20,000 years ago, when most of the land mass was covered by ice. And then as the ice started to melt, the rivers developed. And then the coastal lines started developing. So this is the map of the river basins of North America. And you can see the predominant one is the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River drains nearly half of the continental United States, and it all drains right past here and creates one of the most fertile wetlands in the world. Louisiana's wetlands, Louisiana has about 350 miles of coastline, but within that coastline is almost 7,000 square miles of wetlands. And those wetlands are the breeding and feeding ground of most everything on the planet. Up to 70, maybe 80% of all aquatic species in the Gulf of Mexico and the eastern Atlantic breed and feed in southern Louisiana. I mean, let's face it, when you come to New Orleans, what do you tend to do? You breed and feed. This is also the largest migratory flyway in North America. So that's what makes this region so vital. But as this thing was a great land builder, the river builds land by shifting every few thousand miles, every few thousand years. Where we're standing right now was open water 1,000 to 1,500 years ago, and as the river continued to shift and meander, it built the boot to what it is. And as this fresh water was coming down, these giant cypress grew up. Think of trees that are 300 feet tall, hollow, with all their roots called knees spreading out in an area about the size of the broadside, and that's one tree. And imagine them being from here, actually north of Lake Pontchartrain, about 70 miles out into the Gulf. That's what this land once was. And it was these trees, it was the giant bald cypress with river cane that grew up to 40, 50 feet tall. That's how this land was built. This is as big as it got. This is the Louisiana map in 1922. It's not the map today. But again, nearly 7,000 square miles of wetlands where most everything breeds and feeds in these wetlands. Going back to the indigenous people that knew 10,000 years ago the shape of North America was a turtle, and that's their origin story is of Turtle Island. What we were taught in our history books, or as I say, his storybooks, wasn't actually what happened. That there were people throughout this land that actually used this river as their interstate system for trade. And actually, this is a map of all the indigenous settlements along the Mississippi River Basin. Where St. Louis is today was a place called Cahokia that in the 1200s was actually larger than London. Where we're standing right now, 3,000 years ago, was a land called Bulbancha, which is an indigenous, which is a Choctaw word for many languages, actually called babbling tongue. Because all of these nations throughout the Mississippi River Basin came here to trade. And actually then when I skipped over the bison. Also, part of this watershed is the great bison. That not only were there these great trees, there were millions of people living here. There were also over 70 million bison. And these integrated together to create this wetland. But then we had the invasion of people that aren't here, that aren't from here, that started what they'd say exploring and colonizing, when actually what it was doing was extracting. And with that, they brought slavery. And then forced the people that lived here, that lived with this land, out of this land. This is what happened to the bison. This is what our federal government did, is the bison holocaust. So now the animals that worked with the land to build this land are gone. The bison actually came down here and wintered over in these wetlands. Then we started plowing it. We figured out a way, because the roots grew about 30 feet deep. You couldn't get a hoe in it, but John Deere came up with a way of breaking that, which then led to the Dust Bowl. Again, people coming here that weren't from here, extracting wealth from this region, and then came and cut down all the trees. So now this fertile region, this land that didn't exist 6,000 years ago, is now starting to be, the wealth is extracted from it. And then we built the levees. The levees broke. We had great floods. So we built more levees. For the past 100 years, the river has been restricted to one channel. And we are losing our land at the most rapid pace on Earth because of the industrialization of this river basin. We have now lost nearly 2,000 square miles of our coastal wetlands where these people fish. We've also dammed up all the tributaries, so now there's not as much water and silt in the river, and the river can't deposit and build land as it once did because the river doesn't meander. And on top of building all of the levees, we have been extracting oil and natural gas out of here, which is, those canals have allowed salt water to come in to further decimate a clear-cut wetland. And it's amazing how the industry is concentrated in our waters, because look, over in Florida, you don't see oil wells. You go up the East Coast, you hardly see any oil wells. You go out along the West Coast, there's hardly any oil wells, but they're all concentrated in our Gulf, where our friends behind me fish. And on top of that, the river that once built this land now carries toxic runoff from industrial agriculture where the buffalo once roamed. And it creates one of, if not the world's largest anoxic dead zone that every year hugs our coast, and where nothing but mostly jellyfish can live. And this is what our coast looks like today. I still sometimes have dreams of what this looked like when there were 300-foot trees that extended 70 miles out into the Gulf. And just so you know, to put that into give a reference to that, 1 mile of intact cypress swamp, and again, we had about 70 miles of cypress swamp between here and the Gulf, absorbs or blocks 1 foot of storm surge. Katrina had a 25, 30-foot storm surge. It would have made it nowhere near into Louisiana if we had our intact wetlands and all the biodiversity that it brings. And the maps and the flood projection maps are, this area may not be here in the next few generations. So that's the background of kind of how we got here in this history of how wealth has been extracted from this region. And now we're here today because at some point it's got to stop. At some point we have to make a stand, because when our shrimp goes, our fishery collapses, and what happens to our culture, and what do we do as people?